There's always more than one Spider-Man, maybe even too many Spider-Men. Whether they're from another dimension, someone else controlling Peter Parker's body, or maybe not even Peter Parker at all, there's a Spider-Man for every taste. And what better chance to showcase all of these Spideys than Marvel's upcoming What If animated series. This show takes after the comic series where what if scenarios are given to core events and characters in the Marvel Universe. Anything can happen. So let's take a look at 15 Spider-Man variants we want to see in Marvel's What If. What if instead of teenaged Peter Parker became New York's favorite hero, it was Aunt May? In Earth 3123, that is exactly what happened. On the fateful day when Peter went on his field trip to the science lab housing the radioactive spider, something terrible happened. He forgot his lunch. Uh-oh. May Parker swung into action to deliver the PB&J and ended up getting bitten by the spider instead of Peter. She soon gained incredible spider powers. At first she did stunts to earn money for the family, but duty called and she soon became a masked crime fighter. She's not Spider-Man, she's Spider-Ma'am. And you better show her some respect, young man. Peter and Uncle Ben even join her as her support team. Even without having powers of his own, Peter still invents web slingers for his aunt. It would be really interesting to take a look at how different living as a superhero is for an elderly person than it is for a teenager. It gives a chance to see a spider character dealing with different life obstacles than missing homework or sneaking back in the house before curfew. We'd also get to see how Peter functions in a support role instead of the main event. Go get him, May! In the Old Man Logan universe, things are pretty bleak in America. Most of the country's superheroes were brutally murdered 50 years ago, when all the supervillains teamed up for a coordinated attack. The country has been carved into piecemeal kingdoms ruled over by villains like Red Skull, Kingpin, and the Hulk. This post-apocalyptic nightmare is where we find our next Spider variant, Ashley Barton, aka Spider-Girl. Or a less polite name if you go by the original comic. Ashley is the granddaughter of Peter Parker and the daughter of Hawkeye. Don't think too hard about the math, folks. Much of Old Man Logan's plot revolves around Wolverine going on a mission with Hawkeye to rescue Ashley from Kingpin's territory. Hawkeye thinks that she was captured trying to liberate the territory, but the truth is she wanted the throne for herself. Spider-Girl ended Kingpin with a pipe to the head and almost killed her own dad right after. It would be incredible to see Marvel What If tackle an ambitious villain of a spider like this. She did eventually turn to the side of good, but the idea of Peter Parker's granddaughter being a ruthless supervillain and a ruler over an entire chunk of a post-apocalyptic United States of America is such a tempting story. When the Spider-Man PS4 game came out, a lot of people called Peter Parker a cop, and a lot of people are upset that Miles Morales' dad is a cop. Well, here's a Spider-Man just for those people. Hobart Brown of Earth 138 was bitten by a radioactive spider. Not one from a science lab, but one that had been irradiated by illegal waste dumping. Then he used his powers to fight on the front lines of a war between the oppressed classes of America and the evil authoritarian President Norman Osborn. Together with Captain Anarchy and a punk rock Hulk, he became an inspiration that allowed people to rally together against the corrupt government run by supervillains. Not only is he a superhero, but he's also an anarchist and a punk rock music superstar. Spider-Punk would be a great change of pace from the traditional superhero status quo. Instead of reacting to villains, he takes the fight straight to them. The Marvel Zombie series is one of the biggest departures Marvel has ever taken from their standard universe. The mysterious interdimensional virus that has infected the Earth, causing those infected with it to be consumed with an overwhelming hunger for living flesh. Because of their powers and abilities, superheroes and villains become the top predators in the food chain. They wiped humanity off the face of the Earth, and thanks to powers gained from eating Silver Surfer and Galactus, they were able to travel the universe, devouring everything in their path. The populations of entire planets are eaten to extinction, including Ego, the living planet itself. One of those infected heroes was Peter Parker. Immediately after being infected, he eats Mary Jane and Aunt May. He's one of the longest surviving zombies in the series. Once he eats, he's satiated for a period. That's when his mind begins to revert from a bloodthirsty monster back to its normal self. He's incredibly guilty about all the people he's eaten, the monster he's become. Eventually, he rips his own face off in shame. It would be really entertaining to see Marvel What If tackle this dark reality. Zombie Peter Parker would absolutely make the best choice for the protagonist, even if he has no face. Ugh. Spider-Man. No, that wasn't a mispronunciation. Spiders-Man. We all know that Spider-Man's origin starts with Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider. But what if it was more than just one spider? And what if they did more than just bite him? What if they devoured him whole? Yeah, that's how we got Spiders-Man. During the fateful field trip, Peter fell into an entire colony of radioactive spiders. It's not a human being in that spider suit, it's thousands and thousands of spiders in the shape of a human. Ugh. This spider variant is a way out there interpretation of the character. There's a lot of interesting angles that can be taken with thousands of spiders swinging around New York thinking that they're Peter Parker. We could see how this mass of sentient spiders interacts with the world, what their motivations are, how they deal with the fact that they're living the life of a man they've consumed. And we'd also see how the rest of the world reacts. If J. Jonah Jameson thought regular Spider-Man was bad, yeah, wait until he sees this. What if Spider-Man wasn't Peter Parker, but one of Peter Parker's greatest enemies? This Spider-Man is Otto Octavius, the villain better known as Dr. Octopus or Doc Ock. In the Superior Spider-Man series, he gives up his Doc Ock persona and takes up Spider-Man's. But he isn't just wearing Peter's suit, he's wearing Peter's whole body. It's a long story, but what you need to know is that at one point, Peter and Otto switched bodies. Otto's body died with Peter inside, while Otto was left in Peter's living body. Otto then took up his new identity, both as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He built an upgraded version of the Spider-Man suit, complete with spider legs, inspired by his own octopus tentacles. He didn't just want to be a Spider-Man, he wanted to be better. A superior Spider-Man, if you will. Seeing as how a villain approaches being Spider-Man, both in and out of the suit, would make for a great what-if entry. And the fact that Peter Parker's consciousness still partially exists within his brain, influencing Otto, just adds to the intrigue. When Scarlet Witch was confronted by the X-Men over her instability, she created an alternate world. The structure of society was flipped 180 degrees. While in the normal world mutants were oppressed, in Scarlet Witch's world they dominated. Mutants are celebrated, and they make up most of the world, while ordinary Homo sapiens are the underclass. Things have also flipped upside down for poor old Peter Parker. Parker's identity as Spider-Man is public. He's a celebrity with scores of adoring fans. And what's J. Jonah Jameson up to? Being Peter's lackey, mostly. But this doesn't last for Peter. Sick of putting up with Peter's abuse, J. Jonah Jameson does some digging and finds a horrific secret. Peter Parker is not a mutant. This is something we all know. Peter's not a mutant. He wasn't born with powers. He got them as a teenager after being bitten by that spider. But in this world, that isn't common knowledge. Everyone just assumed that since Peter had powers, he was a mutant. But Jameson found Peter's diary and released it to the world. After his secret is out, he loses everything and is reviled by the public. Seeing Peter in this world would really work well as a what-if episode. We get to see much more successful and much more arrogant version of Peter as his whole world crashes down around him. This Spider-Man isn't Peter Parker. He's Takuya Yamashiro. And trust me, the name is the least of the differences. Takuya is a motorcycle racer. His father, a space archaeologist, dies when he investigates a fallen UFO. When Takuya investigates the spaceship, he finds a dying alien warrior from the planet Spider. The alien injects Takuya with some of his blood so that he can defend Earth from the evil space tyrant Professor Monster and his Iron Cross army. This Spider-Man series is a lot closer to Power Rangers or Ultraman than anything you've seen in the MCU. Not only does Takuya fight hand-to-hand on the streets of Japan, but he also fights giant monsters in his very own giant mech called Leopardon. The Japanese Spider-Man show is a really fun departure from the standard type of Spider-Man interpretation. It would be a really great celebration of that series to include Takuya Yamashiro's Spider-Man in the What If series. There's been plenty of incarnations of Spider-Man that aren't human. Spider-Man has been a colony of spiders, a zombie, a pig. Well, this Spider-Man is a spider monkey. In 2008, Marvel ran a 4-issue miniseries called Marvel Apes. If the name didn't give it away, this is an alternate universe where apes and monkeys are the dominant species on Earth instead of humans. This means that we get monkified versions of all our favorite heroes and villains. The Avengers became the Ape-Vengers. Get it? Dr. Octopus became Dr. Octopus, and Spider-Man became Spider-Monkey. There's not much to explain about Spider-Monkey. He's Spider-Man, but a monkey. It makes a lot of sense, people. When it comes to swinging, monkeys can do more than spiders can do. There's enough dark and gloomy alternate worlds on this list. A Spider-Monkey what-if would be a nice change of pace. It would be guaranteed to put a smile on your face to see a silly monkey swinging his way through New York and embarrassing a bunch of costume gorillas. Spider-Man Reign takes place in the future of an alternate version of Earth. Peter Parker is an old man and a florist. Mary Jane passed away years ago due to radiation poisoning from Peter's bodily fluids. Yeah, that's right. Heroes and villains are a thing of the past, as they've been replaced by a Rain police force that acts under the authoritarian Mayor Waters. When an elderly J. Jonah Jameson delivers Peter his old camera and mask, he's inspired to come out of retirement to free the city. This means fighting Major Waters' police force and an old-as-dirt Sinister Six. This is another what-if that would take a darker look at the possibilities of Peter Parker. It would also give us a chance to see what he's like as an old man, which is pretty rare as far as Spider-Man stories go. When Marvel created the Ultimate Universe, it gave them the opportunity to give a fresh start to a lot of characters and events. One of the characters to get a refresh was Peter Parker himself. Ultimate Peter's story follows much of the same beats as 616 Peter. His parents died when he was young, and he was sent to live with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. He was bitten by a radioactive spider and got his Spider-Man powers. His Uncle Ben was killed by a robber who Peter had let go earlier. And that's when he dedicated his life to crime fighting. The major departure is shortly after Peter turned 16. After a long, grueling battle that involved taking a bullet for Captain America, fighting the Sinister Six, and slamming a truck into Norman Osborn so hard it exploded, Ultimate Peter Parker died in the arms of his loved ones. His death then paved the way for his successor, Miles Morales. The Ultimate Spider-Man stories have been getting more recognition in the last few years, so it'd be great to keep up the pattern and include a what-if about the life and death of Ultimate Peter Parker. And who are we kidding, more Miles is always a good thing. We all know how much J. Jonah Jameson hates Spider-Man. "He's a menace!" is practically JJJ's catchphrase. And there's nothing Jonah's more proud of than his astronaut son, John Jameson. But what happens when Spider-Man is his own son? On Earth 3145, a spider hitched a ride with John Jameson as he went on a space mission. This spider was bombarded with cosmic radiation, of course it was, allowing it to give powers to John when it bit him. While on a later mission in space, Earth fell victim to a thermonuclear war, which wiped out nearly all living life on the planet. Here's a bonus Spidey. One of the few survivors was Ben Parker, who is also Spider-Man on this Earth. John and his space crew have to survive in outer space as Earth is uninhabitable. John uses his spider powers to help them survive. Astro-Spider's powers are different from the standard Spidey power set. He has mind-reading abilities, and his webs are made of psychic energy. Telling his story as a what-if would make for a great science fiction element to the series. If there was ever an anti-Peter Parker, it's Flash Thompson. He's the bully who tormented Peter all through high school. And ironically, he's one of Spider-Man's biggest fans, having no idea the whole time that his idol is the same guy he shoves into lockers. The comic What If Spider-Man Volume 2 asks the question, what if Flash Thompson became Spider-Man? Instead of Peter getting bitten by the radioactive spider, it's Flash. Flash gets all the powers that were rightfully Peter's. He doesn't have the kind heart that Peter does, so he's not as good of a Spider-Man as him. Flash even admits this to himself. Flash says that he isn't a hero. He acknowledges that he's selfish and wants the adoration of others more than anything else. But he wants to be a better person. He wants to work hard so that one day he could consider himself a good person. What if instead of slinging webs, we had Spider-Man slinging bullets? Punisher and Spider-Man are very different characters. Spider-Man's your friendly neighborhood hero. His superheroing is driven by compassion and the desire to protect people. Punisher, on the other hand, is not very friendly. He's got one thing on his mind: killing. His answer to crime and villainy is to riddle them with bullets. He's driven by rage and vengeance. But these two characters have deep ties to each other. They have in common that their vigilante careers were set off by cold-blooded murder of their family members. Punisher actually had his first appearance in a Spider-Man comic. And there was a whole storyline of the Avengers trying to take down Punisher after Peter discovers Frank used one of his web slingers to commit murder. In 2018, Marvel released a What If comic asking what if Peter Parker became the Punisher? That's right, this isn't Frank in a websuit, it's Peter with guns. Uncle Ben was killed in this story just the same as he is in countless others, but Peter takes a different lesson as usual. He reacts to Uncle Ben getting killed the same way Frank reacted to his family getting killed. One of the coolest things we see in the What If trailer was Spider-Man wearing Doctor Strange's cloak, and in the official toys he's referred to as Zombie Hunter Spidey. There's so many possibilities when it comes to this. Spider-Man taking Doctor Strange's place and becoming Sorcerer Supreme could be really amazing. When you combine his physical powers, his scientific mind, and the power of the Sorcerer Supreme, he may be one of the most powerful beings in the entire Marvel multiverse. That's 15 Spider-Man variants we want to see in What If. Now what about the Spider-Mans we don't want to see? I don't know about you, but I've heard quite enough from Spider-Man Noir.